So here's a scenario that I'm sure you have probably found yourself in. You get targeted by a really catchy ad on Instagram for a probiotic that will boost your fertility. And maybe that's the first time that you heard your gut health is actually connected to your fertility. And you think, oh my goodness, maybe this is the missing piece, right? You grab the probiotic, put it in the cart because that's what everyone says to do, right? I have had so many women and conversations in my DMs with women and potential clients who, when we start talking about gut health, they're like, oh, I'm on a probiotic. Like, that's the whole strategy. But here's the truth. Probiotics can be really helpful, but they're not a magic bullet, especially when your gut is inflamed or imbalanced, which I see so often. They really need to be used strategically in the healing process and not as like a spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks approach. So in this episode, we will break down the real steps of optimizing your gut health to restore fertility and the role that probiotics can play in that process. I'm Dr. Trisha, a nurse practitioner and fertility consultant who's been where you are. That's why I created Fertility by Design, where faith meets science to empower you with real solutions, holistic healing, and biblical encouragement. You are not alone. Your fertility is not broken. So let's walk this journey together. So I want to introduce you to one of my really sweet clients. Her story fits hand in hand with what we are talking about today. She had come to me curious about gut health testing and optimizing her fertility. She had previously used fertility treatments for 2 of her kiddos and was convinced that she would still need fertility treatments, but she knew that there was some other underlying things going on with her body. She had been struggling with some autoimmune conditions, and seeing a lot of my posts that connect a lot of those dots, she was very intrigued. But she came to me and said, well, I'm taking a probiotic and trying to support my gut health that way. And what we really discovered when we dug deeper onto her testing was she had major dysbiosis, which is gut imbalance, an imbalance between the good bacteria, and I don't want to call it bad bacteria. It's called opportunistic bacteria. But when we see the opportunistic bacteria take up too much real estate, we start to see a lot of problems, a lot of gut lining breakdown that we'll get into in a little bit. But it can be very problematic for our overall health and our fertility. So absolutely taking a probiotic was not enough. And in some ways, it really could have been making things worse. The other thing I hear a lot that's very popular, I think, in the TikTok world is the parasite cleanses and taking parasite cleanses just because without actual proof that you even have a parasite, or if the parasite is actually a problem, because a lot of, just like the good bacteria and a lot of these bacteria in our gut, parasites can actually do some helpful things for us. So they're not always bad. And so just blindly taking parasite cleanses or probiotics is really not the best approach when it comes to your fertility journey. And you might think that you are doing all that you can do, and then things are not happening for you and you feel at a loss and hopeless because it isn't working. But in theory, it's really not taking care of the issue. And so we're going to break that down. So this client was very adamant that she would probably still need the fertility treatments, but she knew it was really important to work on her gut, especially after we got the testing back. And as we started working towards healing, strategically targeting exactly what she had going on, she sent me a text message that said, is there any reason I would get a false positive? Is there any supplement I'm taking that would give me a false positive on a pregnancy test? And with a screenshot of a blaringly positive pregnancy test. And my answer to her was, nope. And she was just beside herself because she really knew what she was doing was going to help her overall health, but she didn't realize the connection that it had to her fertility. And so I just remember and replay that on repeat of that moment of where she was just so awestruck. And this client is local, and her husband gave me a hug at church and called me an angel. And it was just such a moment to experience with them. And you can actually hear her full story. There's a link to her testimonial in the show notes. So you definitely should check that out, because you don't want to miss hearing all she has to say about her journey. But if you've been taking a probiotic and maybe you've cut gluten and maybe you've cut dairy, maybe you've cut even more than that, and you feel like you've been doing all the things because that's what the internet has told you to do, and you still feel stuck, it's likely that there is more going on under the surface. And cutting gluten and cutting dairy are temporary solutions. Those are not long-term healing of ways to heal your gut, because honestly, what it all comes down to is there's a reason. If we're not tolerating those foods, there's a reason why. And the answer lies in the gut. And we need to know exactly what is going on so that we can address it, so that you don't have to cut gluten and dairy and all the other things that you may enjoy forever. It really is a temporary thing that we do to expedite healing. And then we should be able to tolerate those things as long as we're not like celiacs or, allergic to dairy. We should be able to then tolerate those things once we actually heal. Because here is the deeper issue. Gut health is foundational to hormone health, our immune function, and our fertility. Our gut is responsible for absorbing the nutrients we need to keep egg quality and sperm quality, and to be able to have mitochondrial health at a cellular level, to be able to prioritize hormone production. And when that is imbalanced, procreation is always the first thing to kind of fall by the wayside. So when our gut is not in balance, then we see these issues with fertility. And when we address exactly what's going on, we see these changes pop up that indicate our fertility is restoring along with our overall health. We see better levels of progesterone. We see maybe we found issues with estrogen metabolism, and we see improved estrogen levels, and we see return of cervical fluid, and we see return of the sex drive because the hormones are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. We see decreases in the insulin resistance because you didn't have the bacteria that you needed in your body to be able to maintain your metabolic health. I see these things all of the time, and it's all an intricate, woven process that when we start to move the needle on all the gut stuff, we start to see all the other things fall into place, and we see fertility restore itself. It's so powerful. So we have the gut microbiome. We have our commensal bacteria, like I was talking about, that are really important for things like vitamin synthesis and hormone production and metabolic health and inflammation and reducing inflammation. And so we have these commensal bacteria, or these good bacteria, and we oftentimes can see these can be really depleted if we've been on chronic antibiotics, if we're very stressed, if we don't eat enough fiber or protein, or have a very well-balanced diet. We can see a lot of these bacteria are subpar. And then on the other side, we can see that the opportunistic bacteria, again, not necessarily bad bacteria, can also be useful for very many things. However, when we see them start to take up too much real estate, we start to see things getting out of balance. And especially if those commensal bacteria are not balanced, or if something like H. pylori is present, because that drives stomach acid low and allows these other bacteria to flourish too much and cause what we call gut lining breakdown, or breakdown of the mucosal firewall, or probably, as you've heard it, leaky gut. And what this does is when leaky gut or gut lining breakdown happens, it allows toxins that aren't supposed to get into the circulatory system to get in, and it wreaks havoc on our entire body, and it causes chronic inflammation. And while inflammation is really a good thing, right? Inflammation helps heal cuts. It helps heal our body. But when we have chronic inflammation, and I'm talking like every time we eat something that is getting through, that's, the gluten proteins that aren't supposed to get through, or the toxins that aren't supposed to get through, day in and day out and day in and day out, this plays a significant role in inhibiting fertility because our body is really trying to deal with the big problem, which is the inflammation happening day in and day out. And this is going to negatively affect egg quality. This is going to negatively affect sperm quality. It's going to affect implantation and all of our hormone levels. And it's going to keep our body from ever prioritizing procreation. So that's why getting to the root of what is going on is really, really important, because we need to deal with what is happening so that we can then heal the gut lining. So again, healing the gut is way more than just supplements. We've got to, yes, remove what doesn't belong. So get rid of the bad bacteria that may be overgrowing. And a lot of times we do this, we call it an eradication process, where there's a lot of herbal antimicrobials that can address certain growths and deal with that situation that we're having there. And that's step one. And then, of course, we need to then restore what your body actually needs. So we need to focus on nutrient-dense food. We need to make sure the gut is going to be absorbing the nutrients well by healing the lining. We need to first and foremost try to get our probiotics through food, ideally, because they're going to colonize a lot better than a supplement. However, we can also use strategic supplementation to restore some of those commensal bacteria and help balance things out, and feed those bacteria with prebiotics as well, and focus on foods that can do that, and learn more about the ways our nutrition can really support our fertility and our gut health for the long term, not just to be able to get pregnant, but for the long haul, because our health is really one of the most important things that we have here on earth. And so we want to prioritize that, not just for fertility, but for generational wellness, so that we can keep our children healthy, because we know that what your microbiome looks like in birth, when you give birth, is going to be the microbiome that your child gets. And so if your gut is a wreck, even if you do get pregnant, say you use fertility treatments or IVF to get pregnant and it works, then if your gut was still messed up and your body wasn't ready for that, then you've just passed that on to your child now. And so it really is generational health that we're looking at when we talk about healing the gut for fertility. And then, of course, we focus on rebuilding the microbiome and using things like L-glutamine, zinc carnosine, mucilaginous herbs to really heal the gut lining and I call it heal and seal, back together, to make sure that those things that are not supposed to get through don't get through. And that then ends that chronic inflammatory cycle, and we start to see everything else restore. So while it is a little bit of a process, it's long-term healing versus a short-term, not even really a fix, just kind of a Band-Aid approach. Supplements can also be Band-Aid approaches, just like traditional medicine. Medications can be Band-Aid approaches, right? It's really all about personalized healing, and not just like, hey, take this supplement forever and ever and amen. It's really about using supplements strategically, but then coming behind that with nutrition and lifestyle and all the tools that God has given us to truly heal, to maintain that healing, restore fertility, and get on the path to parenthood. And so this is really what I do within my programs. So if gut health testing sounds like maybe it's your next step on your fertility journey to get more answers and clarity around what is going on and what's been holding you back from getting pregnant, definitely check out the link to our application in the show notes below. And you can book a complimentary call with me so that we can chat through the options that we have to work together and get you on the right path to your next step on your fertility journey. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Fertility by Design. It's just so amazing that God made our bodies to utilize millions and trillions of bacteria to maintain our health and help maintain homeostasis in the body. And this includes fertility and cause fertility to thrive. So if you have any follow-up questions about things I've talked to, we are going to dive a lot deeper into many of these topics. I definitely want to hear feedback and any topics you'd love to hear straight from you. So what I need you to do is go to the link below to join our free Facebook group, Fertility by Design, where you can share and comment and give your feedback so that we are covering all of the topics that you absolutely love and need to hear. I'm so thankful that you joined me today. I pray that you have a blessed week, and I will see you back here next week. That's it for today's episode of Fertility by Design. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, leave a review to help more couples find hope, and share this with a friend who needs encouragement on their fertility journey. Need even more support? Let's connect. Find me on Instagram at Trisha Zehrung for faith-filled fertility guidance, real solutions, and a community that just understands. Remember, your fertility is not broken. Your body is beautifully and wonderfully designed, and God's plan is always perfect. I'll see you next time.